South Africa was colonized by both the Dutch and the British. Dutch East India Company established a small settlement in the Cape of Good Hope, which is now called Cape Town. Dutch rule continued over South Africa from 1652 to 1795. In 1795, the British took complete control of the colony, which remained till 1948. And Dutch, who by then were called Afrikaners, regained this control in 1948, which lasted till 1994. The Dutch then came to be called as Afrikaners because after Dutch established a colony, they treated the indigenous or local people very harshly. When British took control of the colony, under several humanitarian pressures, they abolished slavery. But the Dutch colonizers were not happy with this step of the British colonizers, and they were also unhappy because not only about the freeing of the slaves, but also because the compensation that the owners of the slaves received was not enough according to them. As a result, the Dutch colonizers or the Dutch settlers in South African colony started a trek and went further inland or went into the interiors of South Africa. Their desire, or in an effort to free themselves of the control of the British Empire and also to enslave the indigenous people. In doing so, these Dutch colonizers also forged a nationality or an identity of their own, which they called Afrikaners. An important feature of this identity was their own language, which they called Afrikaans. And these Dutch colonizers who had gone on a trek were called trekkers. Between 1840s and 1850s, several other British settlements were also established in South Africa. South Africa was also a center of immigration, especially from the British and also many other parts of the world. One of the reasons behind this immigration was Witwatersrand gold rush. Gold was discovered in Witwatersrand, which was a reef in South Africa, in what is now called, or near what is now called, Johannesburg. It attracted a large number of immigrants in the 1870s. There was also an arrival of 500,000 English-speaking immigrants towards the end of the 19th century. This immigration was also because of poverty which these people had to suffer back home in the UK. First Dutch and then English were used as the official languages. When South Africa was a Dutch colony, Dutch, of course, was the official language, and later on, when English took control of the colony, English was declared the official language. Language has always been used in South Africa as a struggle for power and privileges for the speakers of a particular language. In this case, whoever has their language as the official language enjoys special power and privileges compared to the indigenous people, the black population. So language has always been used in South Africa to strengthen apartheid. Apartheid is the Dutch word for separation. The Dutch trekkers were very prejudiced and they looked down upon the indigenous people. They started this practice of apartheid which means the white people were given more privileges and more power compared to the black population. And language was used as a tool to strengthen apartheid in South Africa. After taking over from the Dutch in 1806, British tried to anglicize the region by restricting the use of Afrikaans. In 1910, the modern South Africa was formed. And English and Afrikaans, Dutch, which was now called Afrikaans because it had the Dutch colonizers, trekkers, had succeeded in establishing their own identity as Afrikaners. So their language, Afrikaans and English, were declared as the co-official languages. The Afrikaners continued practicing apartheid, treating the local people, the black population, with contempt and restricting their rights and privileges. Although they were not in majority, they were able to establish several political parties. In 1948, one of the parties, Afrikaners Party, came into power by winning the elections and again introduced Africanization of the region, which means that they started limiting the use of English and started propagating Afrikaans more. But English continued to be used by those who were ethnically mixed and also by Indian immigrants. In an effort to restrict the rights and privileges of the black population, the Afrikaners government introduced a controversial language policy called Bantu Education Act. According to this act, the Afrikaans was imposed as a medium of education for black students. Although black students showed more interest in English, considering its value in the international arena and also in higher education. So there was a lot of resistance from black students, which resulted in bloody uprisings and also resulted in the death of many local people, the black population. As a result of the Bantu Education Act and the resulting uprising, the African people started looking at English as the language of liberation and Afrikaans as the language of oppression and repression. So the act was passed in an effort to popularize Afrikaan and push English into the background. The result was completely opposite to what was desired.